and it's got to be yours at least.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Always appreciate you guys having me on.
You're welcome. So let's just get a macro view from you here on this draft. We've got a little bit less than a month to go. So last year we were just living the wide receiver life, and I loved analyzing all the different guys, including with you, in the course of that. This year, from the Bills' standpoint, I'm getting a little bit less out of it, just because it's probably going to be defense. I started the question on a different path, but to the Bills for you, Ryan, at pick 30, would you be among the consensus that expects defense to be the play?
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. At 30, look at also what I really like with what Brandon Beane's been able to do is, and you also have 2 twos as well, and you got a lot of capital even early on day 3 with a couple fourths as well. And I think when you look at what the Bills need right now as far as just some interior push, whether that's at 30, whether that's one of their second-round picks, or whether it's even an instance where you've seen like teams like Jacksonville or Atlanta the last few years where they add multiple guys at the same position. This is an absolutely loaded class for both interior defensive linemen, so that 1 and 3 tech position, and then your guys at edge that are going to win on the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. So whatever the Bills want to do on day 1, I think it is going to be defensive line. Is it that interior? Is that edge? Will remain to be seen. But I also think a big thing on the outside, and they need some more pop at corner, specifically trying to counter some of these teams in the AFC East that are only going to try to continue to live up to, or at least meet the expectations and be parallel with Buffalo. They're going to add some talent specifically on day 2 and early portions of day 3. Just add some fresh legs in that corners room, which I think is needed.
How is this draft at cornerback? I know a couple names of players that are often mocked to the Bills at 30, but I feel like I've been spending so much more time on defensive line, and I think probably they have a bigger need at corner right now. So how does that balance for you first 2 rounds and those 2 position groups?
Yeah, right. They're not going to be in a spot. You get a Travis Hunter or a Will Johnson for me right now in this class. But I think when you look back to late day 1, early portions of day 2, looking at kind of the body types and kind of the skill sets that they like right now and what they project in the future, you're not going to see a team really sway from certain size and skill set, speed, length types of thresholds in that position. And I think really one guy that pops to my mind at 30, and also if he does slip into day 2 because of injury, is Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. I think he's one guy that I've really liked even since he was a true freshman over there in South Bend. You know what you're going to get as far as guys that are coached under Marcus Freeman. He has the size at 6 foot, 190 that you really like. And when he's healthy, the hip flexor really kept him out much of this year, and I would have loved to seen him in the later portions of the year when Notre Dame made that CFP run. But he's just a really fundamentally elite corner. There's a lot of really good man corners in this class, but I think he's right up there with the Will Johnsons of the world for me. So Benjamin Morrison late on day 1. I think Maxwell Hairston as well as a name to know, as well as Trey Amos from Ole Miss. But if they think they want to get into late day 2, early portions of day 3 as well, I don't think the board obviously thins out a little bit as far as fundamental talent of what you expect right away. But I think Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech, a guy that can play man and really run, really the 2 traits that you look for right away from corners at the NFL level to compete. He's one guy, as well as Quincy Riley from Louisville, and as well as Mac McWilliams from Central Florida as well.
Okay, good stuff. Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network here on WGR. If you can, so the Bills kind of need a starting corner right now. And if it means anything, they just went through a tough experience with Kyer Elam, who was already off the team after being their number 1 pick at 3 years. I guess the only thing I would think that it could mean is that it's just another, vacancy on the roster at that position. Would a cornerback picked at 30 probably be good enough to start? Like, I don't know how you feel about that position and these players for just like how ready they might be to start in the league.
Yeah, I think so. I think when even you look at just as far as what the asks are at the position, where you look at Buffalo, where of course they brought in, Joey to come in, Joey Bosa, and add some pop at edge. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to add some younger talent there. If you have a team up front that can rush forward and get home, it's only going to make life easier on the back end. We saw what the Philadelphia Eagles were able to do with 2 rookie corners in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So I think when you look at 30 overall, some of the names I just mentioned a minute ago will absolutely be in play there. I think they can come in right away and start. Or do you want to wait a little bit and just try to have guys that you have in the building right now start right away and just maybe have these younger players maybe play 30 to 40% of the snaps at times and slowly kind of work into snaps. Because I think one thing that is really overlooked every single year is, we live in this microwave society where you just draft a player and throw him into a scheme and just hope he works out. Coaching and player development goes overlooked every single year. So if they're in a fortuitous environment to say we're going to draft a guy, maybe even that 30 or second or third or fourth round, and we want to groom him just a little bit before throwing him into the fire, I think it's a great opportunity for some of the guys in this class that have some fine-tuning in their skill sets needed.
Interesting. So wide receiver, I mentioned last year, Ryan. I know we talked about Keon Coleman. If I remember right, you were into Coleman, and of course he was the Bills' pick with the first choice in round 2. I doubt, like I've already said, and you seem to concur, I doubt they're on offense here in the first round. It seems like maybe, though, with how the season went and what the balance of talent is in this draft, that maybe the second round could be possible. People don't like this wide receiver class very much, it seems, though. So is there a fit possibly for you, either a player or just sort of the idea of adding a receiver then, or is it even worth it to try that on day 3?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think with the receiver group, I think we're spoiled the last few years as far as just the bottom line fundamental talent that's come in to where you just draft and play them right away. The Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrisons of the world, even Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, those types of guys in recent memory. But I think if you're the Buffalo Bills and you trust your football staff to do their football jobs, and what I mean by that is, this is going to be a draft where boards are all over the place, and the word potential is being thrown around. And that word can get a coach fired as far as the potential of somebody. But if you trust your scouting staff to look at certain players, whether you have a second-round grade on this guy and maybe another team has a fifth on that guy, if he fits what you want to do, then why not take a chance on him when you like him? Because it's only going to take one team to really fall in love with a player. And I think when I look for Buffalo, it's guys really on day 2 or early portions of day 3. I don't think anybody other than Keon Coleman, right, and Khalil Shakir, of course, really scare anybody in the Buffalo Bills' department right now. And I do like the Josh Palmer addition to add some veteran legs on the outside. But I think one player that I think would fit just a guy that lunch pail, come in right away, be a wide receiver 2 or a 3 or a 4 and do everything right, that's Jack Besh from TCU. I really enjoyed getting to know Jack Besh and also watch Jack Besh during his career also at LSU before going to TCU. And this is a guy as a true freshman at LSU when Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Keyshawn Boutte, Trey Palmer before he transferred out, all on that roster, Jack Besh led them in receiving yards that year. So it kind of speaks to just who this young man is as far as just a flat-out competitor on the outside that does everything well and really for me kind of fits in that Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid bucket where you just know what you're going to get right away. And bottom line in this class, you're just searching for players that have a high floor, high ceiling. Jack Besh isn't going to impress anybody with the verticality or explosiveness off the ground. But watching the tape, which counts most for these teams, Jack Besh is the guy for me. If I'm Brandon Beane on day 2, early day 3, that I probably have bold and circled that I want to get in a Buffalo Bills uniform.
Okay. I was going to ask you where you think he goes. He does have his fans in the draft community, including yourself. You think late second would be when to do that?
I do. I think late second, early third. He is loved by a lot of teams, including myself, yes.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I knew that stat about the LSU who led them in catches. I keep hearing more and more people talk him up.
Yeah.
Do you have a thought, Ryan, on Coleman and what he might have looked like as a rookie? I mean, there was an injury in there, and you just no one knows what the transition is going to be like for these guys. But, it was interesting to hear you make the point about trusting your staff because they thought enough of Coleman's traits to draft him like they did, of course. And I wonder sort of where they're at on him.
Yeah, I still really like Keon Coleman, and I know individuals in the building that I've personally spoken to, like him as well. And again, there's a lot of questions last year, of course, with trading back and why didn't Buffalo just take Xavier Worthy and all this other stuff. And I get all that. But at the end of the day, for me, I had Keon Coleman above Xavier Worthy. I still think that Keon overall 5 years from now is going to have the better NFL career. You're not going to find a lot of guys that move the way that he does at his size, but also the ability to just cut off routes at 5 yards, be a guy that takes it after the catch. There's a lot of conversations right now, of course, with Ted McMillan, right, from Arizona as far as being the wide receiver 1 in this class. And personally for me, I would take Keon Coleman 100 times over 100 times comparatively to Ted McMillan as far as just athleticism, what I've seen as far as the highs, what I've seen as far as the floor. And in a situation right now where Keon's going to have Josh Allen throwing him the ball, hopefully for the next 5+ years, at least in Buffalo, I'm really excited for his future. And I know you mentioned the injury, but when he can get healthy and really become that wide receiver one, I really think this is a young player that we're going to be talking about that's going to be teasing with 1,000 yards for a long time every single year in his career. That's just my opinion.
All right. Ryan Fowler, my guest here on WGR. I'm Mike Schopp, and Bulldog is off today. Coleman over Tet. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I like Keon Coleman over Tet McMillan, yes.
Would you not have Mcmillan as, sorry for the weird way of asking this, as wide receiver one in this class, or at least omitting Hunter? Would you pick like maybe Matthew Golden over him or someone else?
Yeah, it's close, and I'm glad you said Travis. Travis Hunter is my wide receiver one in this class. For Tet McMillan, just for full context and transparency, I need to see more from him after the catch. As far as a wide receiver one, I like the big body, a lot of Drake London comparisons going up and getting, but living in a 50-50 contested situation, it's hard at the NFL level. I need to get off the line of scrimmage a little bit better, and again after the catch. So he's going to be in that wide receiver 2-3 bucket. It's really Matthew Golden, it's Luther Burden, and it's Tet McMillan for me in that really 20 to 30 type of bucket. I really don't have a guy that I would feel comfortable right now taking in the top 20 and saying, hey, you are a bona fide, legit, right away wide receiver one.
Okay. I mean, McMillan does seem a little polarizing, but everybody's got him in the first round, I think.
Yeah.
Golden, almost. Not quite everybody, but almost. Is he like 100% for you to go in the first round or not quite?
Yeah, I think he will. I just released my recent mock draft on TDN here a couple weeks ago, and I had him in the 20s. I think that's where the range to where even at the combine, some conversations as far as what he actually is going to go. But again, for me and my personal evaluation, I do think he's going to be a day one pick. I really like the character of the kid. I think he's going to work his tail off to be the best he can be. I just think, our job is to look at these things and say pros and cons, and I just think there's some things where they really pop up there that he really needs to work on that may pop up against longer, more physical, dominant press man corners that he's going to have some trouble with at the NFL level.
Okay. The running backs, Ryan, have you had one conversation this season about the draft that did not get to the running backs in this length of time? I mean, it's really fun this year. I'm even getting into whether like the Bills will or should draft one. I think the answer is yes, but maybe not until Saturday because there are so many that just so many analysts think make it almost like historic with the depth at the position, not to put words in your mouth. Starting with Ashton Genty, who is the best running back to come out of the draft since whom?
I will say this. I personally, I have a Amari Hampton right there with Ashton Genty.
Okay.
And that's not just to be different. It's not. I think Ashton is going to be a hell of a football player in the NFL for a long time. But I think both players are really going to be in that top 20, top 25 bucket for me. I think they're both sensational. But I will say this, putting Ashton where there's a lot of buzz, of course, with him tethering to the Las Vegas Raiders at 6. Wouldn't be surprised if it happens at all. I do think he's going to be a top 10 to 12 pick in this class. But I don't think he's a Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs for me. And that's really where we're kind of putting him up in this class, even the Saquon Barkleys of the world. So he's not there for me. But I do think he's going to be a top 12 to 15 pick in this class. So overall, this class overall, though, behind those two guys, I mean, we could sit here all day and talk about 25 to 30 guys that I like. And I will say this for Buffalo's perspective. I know James Cook's a player. I really like Ray Davis as far as a downhill type of thumper from Kentucky. And there's obviously a bunch of other names, including Ty Johnson, who I like, and Darrington Evans. But I just think there's so many guys you can come in the building and just offer different skill sets to where if you don't need one, bring a guy in because there's just so much talent on all 3 days. And even guys that won't hear their names called as priority UDFAs, and the phone lines are going to be wild for those players, for teams to get them in the building as UDFA signings.
Wow. I'm really curious about what kind of turnover maybe we get this year if so many of these rookies are really it. Like last year was veterans, some on new teams that got contracts, and it was a little stunning. But it worked out for most of those teams. I mean, starting with Barkley and Derrick Henry, of course, Jacobs in Green Bay, Mixon. And so there are contracts there, but there's also age. And I wonder how many NFL teams might end up drafting a running back, even on Saturday, and going to camp and telling themselves that that's their best guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very interesting year because even looking at next year where Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, even guys like Travis Etienne and even a guy like Javonte Williams that's now in Dallas as their RB1, quote unquote, there's going to be an addition there in the draft, and it may be high in round one. There's just a situation to where there could be a lot of players. I could see even a depth chart for some team to where you have guys in the building right now, but they may take two players, and you end up as far as week 5, week 6 with two rookies as the top players on your depth chart at the position because there's different body types, like a day 2 Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez, Cam Skattebo, or you can have more of that scat-backy receiving types with the Brashard Smiths from SMU or LaQuinn Allen from Syracuse. There's guys of all different types and shapes and sizes that, of course, are going to fit different schemes across football. And as you mentioned, with this free agent market where the running back position really is coming back now, where teams are going to lean on guys when they're playing two high defenses, this draft's going to be really fun to where once that, a Hampton or Genty, wherever they go, as far as top 30 picks, that round 2 bucket, that bonanza that is expected at that position on that day. Whenever guys start to get flying off the board, you may see a run of, let's just say, 15 to 20 picks, maybe 8, 9, 10 running backs go because these teams are going to really prioritize that position because there are so many high-level ball players at that position.
You could see that happening as early as round 2.
100%,
wow.
Yes. And it starts with Travion Henderson and Caleb Johnson early on day 2.
If you like Hampton, you sound maybe like you like Hampton more than consensus and maybe Genty a little less to my ears. You said you have them close. Hampton is somebody for me that it feels like it's pretty polarizing. I mean, there are those that maybe, including yourself, think just like he's got it all, and others who are less impressed. I'm not even really sure why. But if you were a fan of his, maybe you would have sort of thought about that or had a take on it.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at Amarian, I think one thing for me that really moved the needle a little bit, I personally, in a day and age where so many trainers and agents and all these different types of people get involved with this pre-draft process now where we don't see guys really do anything anymore. I love guys that compete, away from their film, what we've seen for years and years and years. And that's not to say I just look at a 40 time and say I'm going to move a guy up 2 or 3 rounds. I personally can't. But Amarian Hampton, seeing him show up in Indy, seeing him live, the way that young man looks, the way that he carries himself, the way in which he competed and blew metrics off the spectrum as far as what you need to see at the running back position at 22 years old, at 6'1", 220 pounds. He probably doesn't have a lick of fat on his body. I mean, the guy is a pounding playmaker. He can run through you. He can go over you. He can go around you. Now I know at the NFL level where the running back position, a lot of it is correlating success with who you have along your front 5. I think really Saquon Barkley, right, going from the Giants to the Eagles, it's really the epitome of that. But I think with Amarian Hampton in North Carolina, where it was just consistently his ability in the ACC to dominate week after week after week after week with that body type and less tread on the tires than what Ashton Genty's going to enter the league with, that's just something that moved the needle a little bit for me with Amarian in this pre-draft process.
Like it. Before we let you go, Ryan, how about the top of the draft and the quarterbacks? More and more it sounds like Cam Ward to Tennessee at 1, although you might disagree, maybe not. And then Sanders as quarterback 2. I think there's a lot of different possible outcomes there.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun. I can't wait. I can't wait. Every year we head to the thing saying, hey, we have a really good feel about the first maybe 7 to 10 guys. There is no consensus. And if anybody tells you different, I promise they're lying to you. There are boards all over the place with these guys. I do expect Cam Ward right now to be a Tennessee Titan. Shadur Sanders, right now I do think the Browns would be locked in on Abdul Carter at 2 to really make the best defense in football with he and Myles Garrett, of course. But then really the conversation is, where does Shadur Sanders go? I still think the Giants are in the spot to get a young guy. I really don't care that Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston's there. That doesn't put them out of the running for that. And then it's really that Jalen Milroe, Will Howard. I really like Tyler Shuck from Louisville, Jackson Dart. Where do these guys start to come off the board? And I think it may be earlier than possible, earlier than what's expected, just because in this day and age, specifically teams in the AFC where they're battling the Mahomes and Josh Allens of the world, either you got a guy or you don't. And if this is one of the players that you can see on day 2 that can move that needle for you, there's going to be some guys in that aspect to do so.
Do you like Hunter to New England?
I do like Hunter to New England, even though I think they're locked in on Armand Membu from Missouri. So we may even see Travis Hunter around when Jacksonville comes on the board, and they're going to have to battle, say, hey, do we want Travis Hunter or do we want Mason Graham? But Travis Hunter personally is my number one player in this class.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to imagine him slipping at all, right? But maybe the Giants' interest in a quarterback would be the one thing that could make that happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, we covered a lot. Really appreciate your time and insight. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks as always.
You're welcome. Ryan Fowler of the Draft Network.